All right. For more on this, we welcome back, we got Roger Zakheim, Ronald Reagan Institute Director and National Defense Forum co-founder. And we have Reince Priebus, my goodness, Fox News political analyst and the former chief of staff. As I recall, even though I had not yet entered the administration in late 2017, Reince Priebus was still there at the chocolate cake Syria incident, or do I have that wrong, Reince?
Yes. No. You're bringing back one of the greatest memories. And another reminder why, everyone's trying to analyze this China trip. There's one thing you can say about President Trump. If there's anyone that can handle the pomp and circumstances, the high stakes, the drama of all this, it's President Trump. But nothing more dramatic than having dinner with the president, and across from us is President Xi. And it was a beautiful meeting in Mar-a-Lago, and the two of them actually got together very well. And 3/4 into the dinner, the president said, it's really awkward, I'm sorry to say, but, just give us a few minutes. I need to leave the table. Leaves the table. We go to another location secured in Mar-a-Lago. He takes his last analysis on the bombing in Syria. He gives the order to launch the 58 Tomahawk missiles. Those get launched. Back up to dinner. The president says, "Oh, hello," and he comes back to the dinner. He said, asked President Xi, he says, "I just want to make a little announcement. We've just launched 58 Tomahawk missiles in Syria. Can I ask, how is the chocolate cake?" So that he's just not intimidated by anything. He is a force of nature. But I didn't know you were going to bring that up, but it is an amazing memory of President Trump, that's for sure.
It's a great story. I mean, it's a true story also. And by the way, it just completely knocked out Syria. Not too long later, Assad was gone. That was a Chinese interest in Syria. It was a Russian interest too, but it was also a Chinese interest. She could not have been thrilled about it. But, Roger Zakheim, my point here is, China might want to give some help, a little bit of help, maybe, to reopening the Strait of Hormuz, okay? Because they're being damaged by it. They get almost half their oil from it, and it's hurting their economy. But then again, when I think about it, Roger, and this is what I want to talk about here, I don't exactly know, what is China going to say to Iran? How does China force Iran to do anything? When we say they're going to put pressure on Iran, Iran is already decimated. You're left with fourth-string, crazy, insane mullahs for the Revolutionary Guard and so forth. Some of them are probably fleeing to Moscow as we talk here this evening. The point is, what can China do? This is an American issue. America working with Israel. We're 90%, 95% done. The rest of it's probably coming right after this summit meeting. This is our problem. China's not going to, they can't, what are they going to do? That's the question I'm asking. There's too much media hype about how somehow China's going to solve this problem. Anyway, what do you think, Roger Zakheim?
Look, I think China aspired to be the geopolitical heavyweight in the Middle East, and they haven't been able to do that. In fact, they recruited Iran to be part of their axis of aggressors to sort of back Iran economically, perhaps with intelligence and other forms of support to distract the United States. Well, I think that's backfired entirely. President Trump is going to meet with President Xi in the PRC, where all those aggressors, here I'm talking about Venezuela, in addition to Russia and now Iran, are weaker now than they were when President Trump came to office in January 2025. So I think what Xi was hoping Iran would be an asset. It's a liability for the PRC right now. And I think President Trump knows that. I think that's a big part of the leverage he has going into Beijing. I mean, President Trump wants stability with the People's Republic of China. That's probably okay for now, given everything else we have going on. We all know over the long term, this competition with China is a fundamental challenge to the United States. But we'll take stability for now. President Trump's going to engage in his dollar diplomacy. That's what he knows how to do, and that's why all those CEOs are going with him. And hopefully that will lead to advantages for the United States, for our economy, for the American people. But Iran, that's a liability for Xi. And soon, I think, overall, it's really going to advantage the United States and our allies in the region.
I mean, Reince, I read all these media accounts that China's going to help us do this and China's going to help us do that, and I acknowledge China would like to see these Strait of Hormuz open. Okay, I'm sure they would, but what's their leverage on Iran right now? It's a totally decimated country, decimated leadership. They're going broke. They're starving. The blockade is working. The U.S. is in control. And another combat and probably major bombing is coming. Could even take out the rest of their economy if they go after Kharg Island. In other words, I don't see what's China going to do with Iran. We're going to have to finish that off. China can't do it for us. I mean, I guess that's my point. And I'm surprised that so many people are speculating that somehow China is going to, give us the easy pass to solving Iran. I don't believe it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, China's trying to play firefighter while funding the arsonist at the same time. I mean,
yes.
They've got they're in a bad spot. I mean, they on one hand, are they going to play stakeholder in global peace, or are they going to be a silent partner funding this terrorist state? I mean, you're right. I mean, they want the strait open, but they don't want the United States to have such a big victory that they have even more dominance in the Middle East. So they're sort of handcuffed, as you have been pointing out, in this entire situation. I mean, I guess the only thing is, which I think is highly unlikely, is that somehow they give away the store on some deals somewhere. I don't know. I doubt it. I'm throwing it out there, rare earths or something like that, and in exchange. But the one thing is, the president is never going to cut a deal with Iran without a deal on nuclear. I mean, it's just not going to happen. He knows that. He knows what the line in the sand is. And today, Iran basically admitted, yeah, we've got the nuclear material and we can make weapons-grade bombs. I mean, they're saying it. I mean, they're nuts. But, I mean, I think you take them at their word and say, okay, they've just admitted it. So I don't see the deal without nuclear. They know how to stall. They know how to drag their feet. They've been doing it for president after president. And they've never run into President Trump before, but now they have.
Yes, yes, indeed. Roger Zakheim, the other thing is Taiwan. First of all, you got to assume China is watching us with our incredible military might. I don't think they realize just how mighty our might is, and there's more coming. According to President Trump, we may be unveiling some additional weaponry. Second point is, talk about the Strait of Hormuz. How about the Strait of Malacca? I mean, that covers that whole China Sea area going from, I guess, South Korea all the way down. Is China going to risk that? I mean, we know how to do that. They're going to have a fight on their hands. It's not like they're going to we're going to let them just take a bunch of rowboats and go to Taiwan over the Taiwan Strait and suddenly take over the place. I don't believe that for a minute. So therefore, I don't think anything is going to happen on Taiwan. There might be back and forth, maybe have some discussions, but what are we worried about with Taiwan? China's not going to win that battle. China's not going to win any diplomatic battle or military battle.
Look, I think we've enhanced our ability to keep Taiwan free because of what's going on in Iran.
Yes.
And we have to make sure that the Strait of Hormuz remains international waters and there's no Tehran tax on any ship going through the Strait of Hormuz. And that's really the next step for President Trump to take in this conflict. We have to make it clear to the Iranians and the world this will remain open and free waters for all trading in international commerce. That would be something that will advantage everyone, including the People's Republic of China. China does not want to have a situation where sovereign powers are trying to claim sovereignty over international waters. That is not good for the trade that they rely on as well. And certainly, to your point, Larry, that when the United States goes ahead and figures this out, I hope that Project Freedom will be reconstituted at some point during this meeting or afterwards. Then the PRC, Xi will see that, listen, he can't take Taiwan. The United States is capable, is actually more free post this conflict than it was prior to. That advances our security.
I mean, that's the last point, Reince. Part of my argument, inferentially, is that China is in a relatively weaker position, and the United States is in a significantly stronger position as a result of what Mr. Trump and Mr. Netanyahu and their respective militaries have done. The Western allies, if you will, the civilized allies, they're in a much stronger position than they were a couple of months ago. And China's just an observer. They're just watching this. And I don't think they're very happy either.
No, they're not happy, because what it really is all about is an alignment of the anti-West, Russia and China, that includes Iran, versus the rest of the world. And I think that's the way Americans need to see this battle. I mean, we do have the one disadvantage we have is that we've got elections every 2 years and an enormous amount of pressure on both parties. I don't think, though, that now is the time to cut a bad deal, and I'm almost certain the president feels the same way. So the good news is President Trump's on his way to China. He's not going to get suckered into a bad deal. You're right about China, but China's desperate. I agree with you. I think they're desperate, and how they play their cards with President Trump is going to be very interesting, and what path they choose to take. I sort of agree with you, too. I don't think they have much of a path, but they may try to play one. They may try to play one.
All right, we will see. We will see. Anyway, Roger Zakheim, thank you. Reince Priebus, thank you. Chocolate cake at Mar-a-Lago. Right. It's highlighted on the menu at Mar-a-Lago. It's one of the president's favorite desserts. We appreciate your coming back on.